The air in Memphis on that December morning had a crisp bite, a promise of winter that sent a shiver down your spine. But inside Graceland the warmth was immediate, wrapping around you like a plush velvet robe. 3-year-old Lisa Marie Presley was already buzzing. A tiny whirlwind of pure anticipation. Her little hands, usually busy exploring every nook and cranny of the sprawling mansion, were now clasped tight under her chin, her big blue eyes wide with a secret, dazzling knowledge. It was Christmas Eve, and for a little girl that meant magic was brewing thick and sweet, like the smell of gingerbread cookies already wafting from the kitchen. Priscilla, elegant even in her practical jeans and a cozy sweater, watched her daughter with a soft smile. She loved this time of year, loved seeing Graceland transform from a grand estate into a personal, intimate family haven, the usual hum of activity. The phone ringing off the hook, the comings and goings of the Memphis Mafia, the constant presence of staff seemed to quieten, replaced by a different kind of energy. An energy of quiet joy, of shared moments, of a focus on the most important people in their lives. Elvis, the king of rock and roll, was already up surprisingly. Usually he was a night owl, often not seeing the morning sun. But Christmas was different. Christmas was for Lisa Marie. Priscilla had found him in the living room, perched on the edge of the grand piano bench, humming a low tune, a half-eaten Danish pastry in his hand. He hadn't even changed out of his silk pajamas, his dark hair still tousled from sleep, but his eyes held that excited sparkle that only came out around the holidays, especially when his little girl was around. "Morning, sleepyhead," Priscilla had teased, kissing his cheek. The stubble was rough against her lips, but the warmth of his skin was familiar and comforting. Elvis grinned, pulling her closer for a quick hug. Couldn't sleep, too much Christmas spirit in the air, or maybe it was Lisa Marie bouncing on her bed. He winked. Lisa Marie, hearing her name, scampered into the room, her pigtails bobbing. She stopped dead when she saw the partially decorated Christmas tree in the corner towering almost to the ceiling. It was enormous, a majestic Douglas fir that Vernon Elvis's father had personally chosen a week ago. Some strands of twinkling lights were already strung, but the branches still waited for the ornaments, the tinsel, the shimmering baubles that would transform it into a sparkling masterpiece. "Daddy, the tree!" she shrieked, pointing an excited finger. Elvis chuckled, pushing himself up from the piano. He stretched a big, lazy cat-like stretch before scooping Lisa Marie into his arms. She giggled, burying her face in his neck. The scent of his cologne and his own unique smell, a mix of peanut butter hairspray and something uniquely Elvis, filling her senses. "That's right, little bit," he murmured, nuzzling her hair. "Today's the day we finish her up, isn't it? Then Santa will know exactly where to put all those presents." Lisa Marie gasped, her eyes widening even further. "Presents?" "Shuh, not so loud," Elvis whispered conspiratorially, though a wide grin split his face. "Santa's still sleeping, I bet. Gotta be quiet." Priscilla watched them, a profound sense of peace settling over her. This was the Elvis the world rarely saw. Not the iconic performer, the magnetic superstar, but the tender father, the playful husband. Here, within the walls of Graceland, he was just Daddy, a man who loved his family fiercely, who found immense joy in the simple act of watching his daughter's face light up with happiness. Kitchen, usually a bustling hub, was even more so today. Minnie Mae Elvis's beloved grandmother was already kneading dough for her famous yeast rolls, flour dusting her apron. Aunt Delta, always bustling, was meticulously peeling potatoes for the Christmas feast. The air was thick with the scent of cinnamon, cloves, and pine, a comforting blend that instantly transported Priscilla back to her own childhood Christmas memories. "Morning, everyone," Elvis boomed. Carrying Lisa Marie into the kitchen, he greeted Minnie Mae with a kiss on the cheek, then playfully swiped a piece of bacon from a sizzling pan, earning a mock scolding from Aunt Delta. "Elvis, Aaron, you leave that bacon alone. That's for breakfast." Delta fussed, but her eyes twinkled with affection. Lisa Marie, still in her father's arms, reached out for a cookie, already decorated with bright green and red icing. "Cookie, Daddy?" "Not yet, Angel. We gotta have some proper breakfast first," Priscilla intervened, gently taking Lisa Marie from Elvis. "How about some pancakes? Your daddy loves pancakes." Elvis pulled out a chair for Priscilla at the large kitchen table, then settled into one himself, sprawling comfortably. He looked around the kitchen, at the familiar faces, the organized chaos, and a contented sigh escaped him. "You know," he said, addressing no one in particular, "there's nothing in the world like Christmas at Graceland. Nothing." Priscilla caught his eye. He wasn't talking about the grand decorations, the expensive gifts, or the fame. He was talking about the feeling, the atmosphere, the people. He was talking about home, and in that moment she knew exactly what he meant. This wasn't just a house, it was the heart of their family, especially during the holidays. It was where the king shed his crown, even just for a few days, and became simply, beautifully himself. Lisa Marie, now seated in her booster chair, was already chatting excitedly about what Santa might bring, her voice a rapid-fire stream of dreams. Elvis listened, completely engrossed, occasionally interjecting with a dramatic gasp or a solemn nod, feeding her imagination. Priscilla watched them pouring coffee for herself and Elvis, a smile playing on her lips. The first sparkle of Christmas had truly begun, and it shimmered not in the grandness of Graceland, but in the simple, radiant joy of her family. The day was just beginning, and already it promised to be perfect. The house hummed with life, a symphony of quiet domesticity, and for a fleeting beautiful moment the world outside, with all its demands and expectations, faded away completely. It was just them, a normal family getting ready for Christmas, and that Priscilla knew was the greatest gift of all. The morning after breakfast transformed into a flurry of festive activity. The towering Christmas tree, which had stood somewhat bare and expectant, was now the main attraction. Boxes of ornaments, carefully packed away year after year, were brought out from storage. There were the delicate glass baubles, shimmering like captured rainbows, alongside handmade decorations, crafted by Lisa Marie over the past 2 Christmases. Priscilla had a system, neatly arranging the ornaments by color and size. But Elvis, in true Elvis fashion, was more chaotic. His enthusiasm. "Look at this one, Pris," he'd exclaim, holding up a glitter-dusted bird with a long feathery tail. "Remember this? I got it at that little shop in Nashville, back in, well, a long time ago." His memory for random trinkets was surprisingly sharp. Lisa Marie, meanwhile, was focused on the lower branches, carefully placing unbreakable plastic ornaments, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Her giggles echoed through the grand living room as Elvis, with a twinkle in his eye, would sneak up behind her and tickle her sides, sending her into peals of laughter. "Daddy, no tickles," she'd shriek, squirming away, only to tackle his legs a moment later, demanding to be picked up to place a particularly sparkly star higher on the tree. Elvis, despite his famously bad back, would dutifully lift her, grunting playfully as he stretched to reach the higher branches. He loved these moments. He loved the smell of the fresh pine needles, the soft glow of the lights, the quiet joy that filled the house. For a man who lived his life in the spotlight, these simple private moments of domesticity were like a balm to his soul. Priscilla, on a step stool, carefully draped strands of silver tinsel, her movements precise and graceful. "Not too much tinsel, Elvis," she'd gently remind him, seeing him about to dump an entire box onto one section. "It's supposed to look like icicles, not a silver cloud." "Ah, Pris, a little extra sparkle never hurt anyone," he'd argue, but he'd grin and reluctantly pull back. He knew she had an eye for aesthetics, and truthfully, her way always looked better. As the trees slowly came to life, a natural rhythm developed. Priscilla would hand Elvis specific ornaments, instructing him where they looked best. Elvis, in turn, would lift Lisa Marie or tell her stories about the different ornaments, like the tiny ceramic guitar that he swore was a miniature version of his very first one, or the little angel with a chipped wing that Lisa Marie insisted was special because she's hurt. Daddy. The radio, usually tuned to a rock and roll station, was now playing a steady stream of Christmas carols. Elvis would occasionally hum along his rich baritone, adding a surprisingly deep, resonant layer to the classic tunes. At one point, he picked up his acoustic guitar, which was always leaning against a wall somewhere, and began strumming softly. "Come on, y'all," he crooned, his voice mellow and smooth. "Let's sing a proper carol." He launched into a soulful rendition of Silent Night, his eyes closed, his face reflecting a deep reverence. Priscilla and Lisa Marie, caught off guard, slowly joined in their voices, blending with his. Priscilla's clear soprano, Lisa Marie's sweet, slightly off-key treble, and Elvis's powerful bass filled the room. It wasn't a performance, it was a family singing together for the sheer joy of it. The moment felt sacred, a quiet bubble of peace in the grand house. Later, Vernon, Elvis's father, arrived carrying a box of old, well-loved decorations. Vernon was a man of few words, but his presence was a comforting anchor. Quietly took over hanging some of the heavier, more fragile ornaments, his large hands surprisingly gentle. He'd occasionally offer a dry comment which would send Elvis into peals of laughter. "Son, you got enough lights on this tree to signal Mars," Vernon drawled, adjusting a string of lights. Elvis ruffled his father's hair, a rare display of physical affection that always touched Priscilla. "Mars needs some Christmas cheer too, Pum." The aroma of Aunt Delta's baking started to permeate the air more strongly as the afternoon wore on. Cookies, pies, and breads. The kitchen was a hive of delicious activity. Minnie May, with her keen eyes, supervised the baking, occasionally popping her head into the living room to check on the tree's progress. "Looks mighty fine, son," she'd say, a rare compliment that made Elvis beam. "Just make sure that Angel goes on top straight." Finally, as dusk began to fall, casting a soft golden light through the tall windows, the tree was complete. It stood magnificent, sparkling with hundreds of lights, glitter, and a lifetime of memories. The angel, a beautiful, slightly tarnished figure that had graced every Presley Christmas tree for decades, perched majestically on top, her wings outstretched. Elvis, stepping back, put his arm around Priscilla, pulling her close. Lisa Marie, tired but triumphant, leaned against his leg, gazing up at their handiwork. "Beautiful, Daddy," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It surely is, little bit," Elvis agreed, his voice thick with emotion. He squeezed Priscilla's hand. "Best one yet," Priscilla smiled, her heart full. It wasn't about the grandness of the tree or the expensive ornaments. It was about the hands that had decorated it, the laughter that had filled the air, the shared moments of simple joy. It was about seeing Elvis the King down on his knees, meticulously untangling a string of lights, or carefully placing a tiny Rudolph ornament exactly where Lisa Marie wanted it. It was about family, about tradition, about the quiet magic of Christmas taking root in their home. The day had unfolded perfectly, a tapestry woven with threads of love and laughter, and the tree stood as a glowing testament to it all. The stage was set not for a concert, but for the most important show of all, Christmas morning. As darkness truly settled over Graceland, a hush fell, broken only by the distant hum of the heating system and the occasional crackle of logs in the fireplace. The magnificent Christmas tree in the living room now glowed with a soft, ethereal light, casting dancing shadows on the high ceilings. For Lisa Marie, however, the concept of hush was entirely alien. The day's excitement had wound her up like a tightly coiled spring, and the mere suggestion of sleep felt like a personal affront. "But Daddy Santa won't come if I'm sleeping," she protested for the 10th time, clutching her favorite worn teddy bear. Her eyes, usually so bright, were now heavy-lidded, but her spirit was still stubbornly awake. Priscilla knelt beside her daughter's bed, smoothing back her dark hair. Oh, sweet pea Santa only comes when little girls are fast asleep. He needs everyone to be quiet so he can sneak in and leave his surprises. She spoke in a calm, soothing voice, a practiced tone of gentle persuasion. Elvis, leaning against the door frame, still in his silk pajamas, chuckled softly. That's right, Squirt, he's a very stealthy fellow. You gotta trick him into thinking everyone's asleep. Then BAM, presents. He made a dramatic gesture which elicited a small giggle from Lisa Marie. Priscilla shot him a mock glare. Don't encourage her, Elvis. She'll be up all night. He grinned unrepentant, then pushed himself off the doorframe and came over to the bed. He sat on the edge, the mattress dipping under his weight, and Lisa Marie immediately snuggled closer, her head resting against his chest. He smelled of afters have and something warm and comforting. Tell me a story, Daddy, she mumbled, her voice already sounding sleepier. A story, huh? Elvis mused, stroking her hair. Okay, how about the story of the very first Christmas? About a little baby born in a manger and how everyone came to see him. Priscilla watched, a lump forming in her throat. Elvis. The man who could command stadiums, who could electrify millions with a single swivel of his hips, was now softly narrating the nativity story, his deep voice filled with a surprising tenderness. He spoke of shepherds and wise men, of a bright star and the purest love. Lisa Marie listened, utterly captivated, her eyes slowly drifting. Closed. When he finished, the room was silent, except for the soft chirping of crickets outside and the distant hum of the city. Lisa Marie was almost completely asleep, her breathing shallow and even. And now, Elvis whispered carefully, pulling the blankets higher around her, it's time for the Christmas lullaby. He began to hum a soft, wordless melody at first, then transition into Blue Christmas, but sung so gently, so tenderly, that it became a lullaby instead of a bluesy lament. He didn't sing it for an audience. He sang it for his daughter, for her peaceful sleep. Priscilla joined in her voice a soft harmony to his, and together they filled the room with quiet music, a serenade of pure love. By the time the last notes faded, Lisa Marie was deep in sleep, a peaceful smile on her face. Elvis leaned over and kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams, little angel, he whispered, before carefully standing up. He and Priscilla tiptoed out of the room, closing the door almost silently behind them. In the dimly lit hallway, Priscilla turned to Elvis, wrapping her arms around his waist. You're good at that, she murmured, looking up at him. He shrugged, a faint blush on his cheeks. She makes it easy. She's my little angel. He led her back to the living room, where the Christmas tree still glowed, illuminating the piles of carefully wrapped presents beneath it. They sank onto the plush sofa, the soft glow of the tree lights reflecting in their eyes. The house was finally quiet. The only sounds, their own soft breathing and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. It was a rare moment of complete solitude for them, a chance to simply be. Can you believe it? Priscilla whispered, leaning her head on his shoulder. Another Christmas. Elvis sighed, a deep, contented sound. Feels like just yesterday she was tiny, and now she's talking about Santa and presents like she's a little grown-up. He paused, then continued, his voice lower, more reflective. You know, sometimes, with all the everything, he gestured vaguely, encompassing his fame, the demands, the constant travel, sometimes I worry about her growing up around all this, worry about what it's doing to her. Priscilla knew what he meant. The world outside Graceland was often chaotic and overwhelming. Their life was anything but normal. But in these moments, in the quiet intimacy of their home, they strove for normalcy. She's happy, Elvis, Priscilla reassured him, reaching up to gently touch his cheek. She's loved. That's what matters. We give her as much of a normal life as we can within these walls. And she knows, she feels that love. Yeah, he said, his voice soft. She does, doesn't she? She's a good kid. He squeezed her hand. You're a good mom, Pris. The silence stretched between them, again comfortable and full. Elvis picked up a small, intricately wrapped gift from under the tree, turning it over in his hands. "Think she'll like this?" he asked, a boyish excitement in his voice. "She'll love anything you give her, Elvis," Priscilla said truthfully. "It's the thought, the feeling behind it. She cherishes it." They sat there for a long time just watching the lights twinkle, talking in hushed tones about Lisa Marie, about their hopes for her, about the quiet joys of their life together. The world outside, with its flashing cameras and screaming fans, seemed a million miles away. Here in the heart of Graceland, they were just a husband and wife, anticipating Christmas morning with the same quiet awe as any other parents. The magic wasn't in the gifts waiting under the tree, but in the profound love that filled the room. A love so tangible, it felt like another presence, shimmering around them like the tree's soft glow. It was the most perfect, normal Christmas Eve imaginable. The first crack of dawn on Christmas morning was met, not by gentle waking, but by an explosion of energy from Lisa Marie. She burst into Elvis and Priscilla's bedroom, a tiny tornado of excitement, jumping onto their bed with an urgent, high-pitched shriek. "Santa! He came! I know it! I heard him!" Elvis, still half asleep, groaned playfully, burying his face deeper into his pillow. "Santa? Already? Oh man, I told him to wait until after my beauty sleep." Priscilla, however, was already stirring a smile, spreading across her face. This was it, the moment she'd been looking forward to. She knew exactly how many times Santa had truly visited the living room in the dead of night, Elvis himself being the chief elf, meticulously arranging gifts. Okay, little one," Priscilla laughed, sitting up and pulling Lisa Marie into a hug. "Let's go see what magic Santa left." The journey from their bedroom to the living room felt like an epic adventure to Lisa Marie. She practically dragged them, her little legs moving as fast as they could, her pigtails flying. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a palpable energy that filled the grand hallways. When they finally rounded the corner into the living room, the sight was breathtaking. Christmas tree bathed in the soft morning light filtering through the stained glass windows shimmered, but beneath it the piles of presents had multiplied tenfold. Boxes of every size and shape, wrapped in vibrant papers, adorned with bows and ribbons, spilled out from under the branches, a treasure trove of impossible delights. Lisa Marie stopped dead, a small gasp escaping her lips. For a moment, she was utterly speechless, something rare for the talkative 3-year-old. Then, with another squeal, she launched herself towards the nearest pile. Elvis, meanwhile, had sunk onto the floor beside the tree, cross-legged, a look of profound satisfaction on his face. He watched Lisa Marie with an intensity that only a devoted parent could understand. Her joy was his joy, amplified 100-fold. "Look, Daddy, look!" Lisa Marie exclaimed, already tearing into the wrapping paper of a brightly colored box. Her fingers, small and clumsy with excitement, struggled with the tape, but she persevered. The paper ripped, revealing a brand new doll, dressed in a tiny pink ball gown. "A dolly! She's beautiful. She certainly is, Angel," Priscilla murmured, coming to sit beside Elvis, leaning her head on his shoulder. They watched their daughter, completely engrossed in her unfolding discoveries. Elvis handed Lisa Marie another package. "Try this one, Squirt. Santa told me it was a special one." She tore into it with renewed vigor. This time, it was a miniature piano, perfect for her small hands. Her eyes lit up. "A piano just like yours, Daddy?" "That's right," Elvis said, his voice thick with emotion. He couldn't help but imagine her little fingers picking out melodies, perhaps even accompanying him. One day the idea sent a warmth through him. The morning devolved into a beautiful chaos of torn wrapping paper ribbons and excited shrieks. Lisa Marie received a wonderland of toys, a rocking horse, a tea set, building blocks, a child-sized record player with a stack of Disney records. Elvis had a habit of spoiling her, a fact Priscilla often gently reminded him of. But today she let it slide. It was Christmas, after all. And seeing the pure, unadulterated happiness on Lisa, Marie's face was worth every single gift. Elvis was just as excited, unwrapping his own gifts with a boyish grin. Priscilla had given him a custom-made belt buckle, intricately designed with musical notes, and a new leather-bound Bible. Lisa Marie, with Priscilla's help, had picked out a silly bright red scarf with tiny jingle bells attached, which Elvis immediately put on, making a show of jangling it every time he moved, much to Lisa Marie's delight. "Now you're Santa, Daddy," she giggled, pulling on the scarf. He roared with laughter, scooping her up into a hug. "Oh, oh, Merry Christmas, little elf." Priscilla watched them, feeling her heart swell. This was the normalcy she craved. Not the grand performances, not the flashing lights, but this quiet morning filled with the rustle of paper, the excited cries of a child, and the genuine laughter of the man she loved. It was messy, it was loud, and it was perfect. Later, as Lisa Marie played happily with her new doll and the miniature piano, Elvis stretched out on the floor, surrounded by discarded wrapping paper. "Best Christmas ever," he mumbled. Priscilla leaned over and kissed his forehead. "Every Christmas is the best one, as long as we're together." He opened one eye, a playful glint in its depths. "You know, I think Santa might have missed something. I didn't see a brand new Cadillac under the tree for me." Priscilla rolled her eyes, smiling. "You already have 3, Elvis. And besides, I think Santa only brings toys for good little boys and girls. Were you a good boy this year?" He grinned, sitting up and pulling her close. "I'm always a good boy, Pris. Especially for you, and for our little girl." He kissed her temple, then watched Lisa Marie, who was now meticulously arranging her new doll's hair. The simple domestic scene, bathed in the soft glow of Christmas lights, felt like the most precious gift of all. It wasn't about the extravagant gifts, but the shared moments, the laughter that filled the air, and the overwhelming feeling of love that made Graceland, for these few precious hours, the most wonderfully normal home in the world. As Christmas morning flowed into afternoon, the quiet normalcy that had settled over Graceland began to gently expand. It wasn't long before the large, stately rooms started to fill with the warmth and cheerful noise of extended family. Vernon, Elvis's father, arrived first, his sturdy figure a comforting presence. He greeted everyone with quiet nods and a few low words, his eyes twinkling as he saw Lisa Marie playing with her new toys. Aunt Delta soon followed, bustling in from the kitchen where she'd been overseeing the final preparations for the grand Christmas dinner. "Well, don't this tree look grand?" Delta exclaimed, surveying the sparkling fur. "Minnie May, you outdid yourself with the ornaments this year." Minnie May, Elvis's beloved grandmother, merely nodded from her armchair, a small, knowing smile on her lips. She loved these family gatherings, the house full of life and laughter. Elvis, now dressed in a comfortable but stylish leisure suit, moved through the house, greeting everyone with hugs and boisterous laughter. He was at ease, completely himself, without the veneer of the superstar. He helped Vernon set up a card table in the corner for a game of poker. Later, then drifted into the kitchen, drawn by the tantalizing aromas. "Aunt Delta, is that your famous sweet potato souffle I smell?" he asked, peering into the oven. "It is, boy, and you keep your nose out of it until dinner time," Delta scolded playfully, swatting him with a dish towel, but her eyes held deep affection. The dining room table, usually reserved for more formal occasions, was now a grand canvas for the Christmas feast. Priscilla, with the help of Aunt Delta and other staff, had transformed it. Crisp white linen tablecloth was draped over the massive oak laden with silver platters, crystal glasses, and candles that cast a soft, inviting glow. The centerpiece was a magnificent arrangement of holly, pine cones, and red berries. Soon the table was groaning under the weight of the food: a perfectly roasted turkey, glazed ham, fluffy mashed potatoes, corn pudding, green bean casserole, and of course Aunt Delta's sweet potato souffle. Gravy boats, cranberry sauce, and baskets of Minnie May's Easter rolls completed the picture. It was a traditional Southern Christmas spread, abundant and lovingly prepared. Lisa Marie, in a pretty red velvet dress, sat at the head of the children's table, looking very grown up. She chatted excitedly with a cousin about her new doll, occasionally glancing at the adult table with wide-eyed wonder. When it was time to eat, everyone gathered around the dining table. Elvis, at the head, looked around at the familiar faces. His family, the people who had been with him through thick and thin. He cleared his throat. All right, everybody quiet down for a minute," he said, his voice carrying easily over the chatter. A hush fell, everyone looking at him expectantly. He took Priscilla's hand on one side and Vernon's on the other. "Before we dig in, I want to say thanks for being here. Thanks for making this the best Christmas a fella could ask for. And thanks, Lord, for this food and for my beautiful family." A chorus of "Merry Christmas, Elvis," and "Merry Christmas to you too" echoed around the table. The air was filled with the clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversation, and the delightful sounds of people enjoying good food and good company. Elvis, true to form, had a little bit of everything on his plate. He piled it high, often going back for seconds, especially of the turkey and the sweet potato soufflé. He recounted stories from his touring days, making everyone laugh with his exaggerated tales, teased Vernon about his poker face, and complimented Aunt Delta on every single dish. Priscilla watched him, a quiet happiness in her heart. This was the Elvis she loved the most, the one unburdened by fame, simply enjoying being home with his family. He listened intently when Vernon spoke about the farm back in Mississippi, his roots connecting with the simple life he'd come from. He helped Lisa Marie cut her turkey patiently, answering her endless questions about Santa and his reindeer. Mid-meal, Elvis leaned over to Priscilla, his voice a low murmur. "This is what it's all about, ain't it, Pris?" He gestured around the table. "All the fancy stuff, the concerts, the records. It don't mean nothing without this." Priscilla nodded, her eyes glistening. "It means everything," she agreed, reaching for his hand under the table. The meal stretched on unhurried and joyous. Laughter erupted frequently, especially when Elvis would impersonate a famous movie star or break into an impromptu rendition of a gospel hymn, his rich voice filling the room with warmth and reverence. Dessert was a parade of pies, pecan apple, and pumpkin, along with gingerbread and fruitcake. Coffee flowed freely. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the dining room, a comfortable satiety settled over everyone. Plates were cleared, and the family began to migrate back into the living room, some heading for the plush sofas, others for the card table. The sounds of clinking dishes and cheerful chatter lingered in the air, a testament to a meal well shared and a family deeply connected. It was a scene of such profound normalcy, such genuine warmth, that it felt like a sacred moment. King, surrounded by his loved ones, was simply a man enjoying Christmas dinner, and it was perfect. With the last crumb of pie consumed and the dining room cleared, the Christmas afternoon at Graceland transitioned into a lively, playful chaos. The adults, comfortably full and in high spirits, gathered in the living room, some settling into armchairs, others gravitating towards the grand piano or the card table that Vernon had set up earlier. Lisa Marie, having recharged her batteries with a nap after the feast, was a ball of boundless energy ready for whatever fun the adults would provide. "All right, who's up for some games?" Elvis boomed, stretching out on the rug in front of the fireplace, his large frame surprisingly graceful. "I'm thinking charades, or maybe a good old board game." Aunt Delta, never one to shy away from a challenge, immediately piped up. "Charades, Elvis, you always make a fool of yourself." "It's entertaining." Elvis feigned a wounded look, putting a hand to his heart. "Why, Aunt Delta, I'm a natural. I'm practically an actor." They divided into two teams: Elvis, Priscilla, and Lisa Marie, who moaned slide, and Vernon, Aunt Delta, and a couple of close family friends who had joined for dinner. On the other, the charades began, and the room erupted with laughter. Elvis, true to form, was a dramatic, over-the-top performer. His attempts at miming famous movies or songs were legendary, often so outlandish that they were impossible to guess, yet hilarious to watch. He acted out Hound Dog by flopping on the floor and howling, then Jailhouse Rock by doing exaggerated hip thrusts that sent Lisa Marie into peals of delighted giggles. "Daddy, do the doggy again," she'd shriek, making him repeat his performance. Priscilla, on the other hand, was surprisingly good, elegant and precise in her movements, often guessing obscure titles with ease. She'd mime things like Singing in the Rain with graceful dance steps, or a subtle nod for Love Me Tender. Vernon was quiet, but effective, often choosing simple words that stumped them because they were overthinking it. Aunt Delta was boisterous, her guesses loud, and her actions equally so. Competitive spirit was high, but it was all in good fun, punctuated by bursts of laughter and playful taunts. After a few rounds of charades, Elvis declared it was time for a change. "Who's for a game of touch football outside?" he suggested, looking out at the sprawling lawn. The Memphis weather had been unusually mild, though a thin layer of frost still shimmered on the grass. "Elvis, it's freezing out there," Priscilla protested, pulling her sweater tighter. "Nonsense, Pris. A little fresh air will do us good," he insisted, already heading for the door. Lisa Marie, overhearing, immediately ran after him, grabbing his hand. "Football, Daddy, football!" Reluctantly, Priscilla bundled up Lisa Marie in a thick coat and scarf, and they ventured out onto the lawn. It wasn't a serious game, more like an impromptu chase with Elvis, Vernon, and a couple of the men tossing a soft football around, making sure to include Lisa Marie. Elvis would intentionally miss a catch, letting the ball roll to her feet, and then cheer wildly as she wobbled with it towards an imaginary end zone. He'd scoop her up, pretending she'd made the winning touchdown, and spin her around, her laughter echoing across the manicured lawns of Graceland. It was a picture of pure, unadulterated happiness. Elvis, the global icon, was just a dad playing with his kid, his face flushed with exertion and joy. Back inside, warmed by hot cocoa and a crackling fire, they moved on to board game. Elvis insisted on Monopoly, a game he notoriously dominated. He loved the wheeling and dealing, the strategic buying and selling. He'd even try to get Lisa Marie to understand the concept of rent, patiently explaining about Boardwalk and Park Place, though she was more interested in collecting the colorful money. "All right, Priscilla, you landed on my hotel on Park Place. That's gonna cost you," he'd tease, a triumphant glint in his eye. Priscilla would roll her eyes, but she loved seeing him so engaged, so relaxed. They played for what seemed like hours, the living room filled with the clatter of dice, the rustle of property cards, and the constant banter. As dusk began to settle once more, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the games slowly wound down. Vernon was slumped contentedly in his armchair. Minnie Make was nodding off by the fire, and even Elvis looked pleasantly tired, a happy exhaustion on his face. Lisa Marie, curled up in Priscilla's lap, was finally starting to fade, her small fingers clutching her new doll. The laughter had been genuine, the interactions real, unforced. It wasn't about being the king or the queen. It was about shared moments, friendly competition, and the simple joy of being together. Graceland, usually a symbol of excess and fame, had once again transformed into a cozy, normal home, echoing with the most precious sound of all, the sound of a family enjoying Christmas. And in those moments, Priscilla knew, lay the true magic of their lives. As the last echoes of laughter from the games faded, and the Christmas afternoon began its slow descent into evening, a quieter, more contemplative atmosphere settled over Graceland. Some of the extended family members had begun to depart, their goodbyes filled with hugs and promises to meet again soon. Lisa Marie, finally succumbing to the day's overwhelming excitement, had fallen asleep in Priscilla's arms and was gently carried off to bed. Elvis found himself drawn back to the living room, to the soft glow of the Christmas tree. The house was quieter now, a gentle hum replacing the earlier joyful clamor. He walked over to the grand piano, its polished surface reflecting the twinkling lights. He ran a hand over the keys, then slowly sat down, his fingers finding a familiar chord, a soft, melancholic melody beginning to drift through the room. It wasn't a performance, it was a private moment, a spontaneous expression. Played a gospel hymn, Peace in the Valley. His voice a low, reverent hum, barely audible. He closed his eyes, his head tilted slightly, lost in the music. For all the spectacle and power of his public performances, these quiet, soulful moments at the piano were often the most revealing, showing the deep spiritual core of the man. Priscilla, having settled Lisa Marie in her bed, came back into the living room and found him there. She didn't interrupt, simply slipped onto the piano bench beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. The music enveloped them, a shared blanket of sound and feeling. When the last notes faded, the silence that followed was not empty, but full, rich with unspoken emotions. Elvis sighed a deep, contented breath. "Sometimes," he began, his voice soft, "it feels like a dream, all this." He gestured around the grand room at the magnificent tree, at the quiet opulence of Graceland. "Sometimes I wake up and I still think I'm that little boy from Tupelo, hoping for a new pair of shoes for Christmas." Priscilla knew what he meant. The contrast between his humble beginnings and his extraordinary life was something he often grappled with. It fueled both his generosity and his occasional anxieties. "You earned all this, Elvis," she murmured, her voice steady. "Every bit of it. But it's not the house or the things that matter most to you, is it?" He shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the dancing lights of the tree. "Nah, it's what we had today." Lisa Marie's laugh, Aunt Delta fussing over the food, Vernon's quiet jokes. "You..." He turned his head to look at her, his eyes filled with a profound gratitude. "It's moments like this, when it's just us, and it feels normal, like any other family having Christmas." He paused, a slight frown creasing his brow. "Sometimes I worry I'm not giving her enough of that normal with the tours and the movies, and always being on the road." "You give her so much more, Elvis," Priscilla said gently, reaching up to cup his cheek. "You give her your love, your time when you're here, your spirit. She knows she's adored. And we work to make sure these walls, this home, feel safe and normal for her, no matter what's happening outside." He leaned into her touch, a small, grateful smile touching his lips. Yeah, you do. You're good at that, Pris. You keep us grounded." He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her closer, their shoulders touching. They sat there for a long time, just watching the lights, listening to the soft crackle of the fire, immersed in the quiet intimacy of the moment. It was a space where the world's expectations and pressures simply melted away, leaving only the raw, genuine connection between them. Elvis's fingers drifted back to the piano keys, this time playing a familiar Christmas carol. A gentle rendition of "The First Noel." Priscilla hummed along, her voice a soft, almost inaudible accompaniment. The melody filled the room, a soothing balm after the day's joyful intensity. He wasn't playing for applause or an audience. He was playing for himself, for Priscilla, for the quiet peace that had settled in his heart. It was a moment of deep gratitude, of recognizing the simple, profound blessings in his life amidst the dazzling chaos of his fame. "Merry Christmas, Pris," he whispered, leaning his head against hers. "Merry Christmas, my love," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. In the soft glow of the Christmas tree, surrounded by the silent echoes of the day's laughter, they found a deeper connection, a shared understanding that went beyond words. It was a quiet melody of gratitude, a song of contentment that resonated within the heart of Graceland, making it not just a house, but a true home. This was the king, stripped of his crown, finding his greatest wealth not in gold, records, or roaring crowds, but in the peaceful, everyday magic of family. As the evening deepened at Graceland, a natural progression from quiet reflection led to shared joy. Fueled by music, the ultimate language of the Presley family, Elvis, having found solace at the piano earlier, now felt a different kind of energy stirring within him. The spiritual tranquility had bloomed into a desire to share, to uplift, to make music not for performance, but for pure, unadulterated pleasure among loved ones. He turned from the grand piano, a mischievous glint in his eye. "All right, y'all who's ready for a little sing-along?" he called out to the remaining family members and close friends, scattered around the living room. Vernon was polishing his spectacles. Minnie Make was knitting quietly, and Aunt Delta was sipping tea. Priscilla was reading a book, but her attention was instantly captured by Elvis's infectious enthusiasm. "What are we singing, son?" Vernon asked, a small smile playing on his lips. He knew Elvis's spontaneous concerts well. "Oh, I don't know," Elvis mused, striking a chord on the piano. "How about some good old gospel? Gets the soul right, don't it?" Without waiting for a definitive answer, he launched into a powerful, yet surprisingly intimate rendition of Amazing Grace. His voice, rich and resonant, filled the room, raw with emotion and completely unvarnished by studio polish. It was the voice of a man who truly believed, who sang from the depths of his spirit. Priscilla, knowing the words by heart, joined in her clear soprano, blending beautifully with his deep baritone. Vernon, though not a singer by nature, hummed along occasionally, mouthing a few words. Aunt Delta, her eyes closed, swayed gently, feeling the music. Minnie Meg put down her knitting, a look of profound peace on her face. It wasn't a structured performance. There were no microphones, no stage lights, just Elvis at the piano, his powerful voice filling the opulent room. He transitioned back from one hymn to another. "How great thou art," "Crying in the chapel," "Precious Lord, take my hand." Each song was delivered with heartfelt sincerity, transforming the living room into a spontaneous chapel. As the music flowed, a sleepy Lisa Marie, roused by the singing, padded into the room. Her small blanket clutched in her hand. She rubbed her eyes, then saw her daddy at the piano singing. She smiled, a sleepy, contented smile, and curled up on the rug near Priscilla's feet. Elvis saw her, and his voice softened further, though no less powerful. He switched to a more upbeat, familiar carol, Jingle Bell Rock, and began to tap his foot, inviting everyone to join in. "Come on, little bit. Dance with Daddy," he encouraged Lisa Marie. She giggled, her tiredness forgotten, and started to bounce to the rhythm, her little bare feet tapping on the rug. Elvis, never one to stay seated for long, stood up, still playing the piano with one hand, and began to sway and clap with the other. Soon everyone was clapping, some humming, others singing, along their voices not perfectly harmonized, but filled with genuine joy. Even Vernon, despite his stoic nature, cracked a wider smile and tapped his foot. "Faster, Daddy, faster," Lisa Marie urged, dancing with abandon. Elvis laughed, picking up the tempo, making the piano keys fly. He loved to see her uninhibited joy. He moved away from the piano, grabbing an acoustic guitar from its stand, and started strumming a lively tune, inviting the impromptu sing-along to continue. He played classic Christmas tunes like "Here Comes Santa Claus" and "Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer," his voice playfully animated. He'd occasionally stop playing to tell a funny story about a Christmas past, or to tease one of the family members, sparking another round of laughter. It was a vibrant, unscripted evening of shared music and connection. There was no pressure to be the king. He was just Elvis, the family man, the one who loved to sing, to share his gift, not for fame, but for the sheer delight of it. He looked around the room at the faces of his loved ones, bathed in the soft glow of the tree lights, and felt a profound sense of rightness. This was home. This was happiness. Priscilla watched him, her heart overflowing. His energy was infectious, his passion for music undeniable, even in these casual, intimate settings. He was a force of nature, yes, but also a gentle, loving soul, particularly when surrounded by his family. As the night wore on, the singing grew a little softer, the dancing a little slower. Lisa Marie finally succumbed to sleep again, curled up on the rug like a small angel. Elvis put down his guitar, his voice a little hoarse, but his face radiant with contentment. "That's enough music for one night, I reckon," he said, stretching his arms over his head. "My voice needs a rest for tomorrow's gospel album." He winked a playful jab at his rigorous recording schedule. But the atmosphere lingered, a warm, resonant hum of shared moments. The joy hadn't been manufactured or performed. It had simply flowed, naturally and beautifully, from the heart of the family. The music had woven a tapestry of memories that would last far beyond the holiday season, a reminder of the simple, yet profound magic of Christmas at Graceland. The lively music sessions slowly mellowed into the quiet hum of a satisfied evening. Lisa Marie, having drifted back to sleep on the plush rug, was gently scooped up by Priscilla and carried back to her bed, a peaceful smile still lingering on her face. Elvis, a quiet contentment settling over him, sat back on the sofa, his gaze fixed on the twinkling Christmas tree. The last of the extended family members were preparing to leave their goodbyes, filled with a warmth that only shared holiday memories could forge. Vernon, always the first to retire, bid a soft goodnight. "Well, son, that was a fine Christmas. A real fine one. Couldn't have been better," Elvis replied, a genuine warmth in his voice. He reached out and clasped his father's hand, a silent acknowledgement of their shared history and love. Aunt Delta, after making sure all the leftover food was properly stored, gave Elvis a hearty pat on the back. "You were quite the songbird tonight, Elvis. But don't you be staying up too late now? You hear? Christmas magic needs its rest." "Yes, Mom," Elvis said with a grin, knowing full well he'd probably be up for hours. Once the last car had pulled away from the gates, and the distant hum of its engine faded, Graceland truly settled into its Christmas night quiet. The grand house, usually bustling with activity, now felt like a warm, cozy cocoon. Only the soft glow of the Christmas tree lights and the occasional crackle from the dying embers in the fireplace illuminated the living room. Priscilla returned, slipping onto the sofa beside Elvis, tucking her feet beneath her. She leaned her head on his shoulder, both of them content in the comfortable silence. The air was thick with the lingering scent of pine, gingerbread, and the faint, sweet perfume of Priscilla's cologne. "She had a wonderful day," Priscilla murmured, referring to Lisa Marie, absolutely exhausted but so happy. "Yeah," Elvis agreed, his voice a low rumble. He reached for her hand and intertwined their fingers, tracing patterns on her skin. "Seeing her like that? That's the best present there is, just pure, unadulterated joy." They sat for a long time, not needing to speak, simply enjoying each other's presence. The day had been full, brimming with laughter, good food, and music. And now the sweet aftermath was just as precious. It was in these quiet moments that the true essence of their family life, often overshadowed by the glare of the public eye, truly shone through. Elvis eventually stirred, reaching for a photo album on the coffee table. It was an old leather-bound one filled with pictures from their early days, snapshots of Lisa Marie as a baby, and candid shots of family gatherings over the years. They flipped through the pages together, a nostalgic journey through their shared past. "Look at this one," Priscilla chuckled, pointing to a photo of Elvis looking comically flustered while trying to change Lisa Marie's diaper. "You looked like you were wrestling an alligator." Elvis roared with laughter. "She was a squirmy one. Thought she was going to escape right out of my hands." They reminisced about past Christmases, shared funny anecdotes, and marveled at how much Lisa Marie had grown. Each picture held a memory, a story, a shared experience that bonded them. It was a tangible reminder of the life they had built together, brick by brick, moment by moment. The hours slipped by unnoticed. The fire in the hearth dwindled to a few glowing embers, casting an even softer light. Christmas tree lights twinkled on, tireless guardians of the festive magic. Finally, Elvis let out a long, contented sigh, closed the photo album, and set it gently back on the table. He turned to Priscilla, his eyes soft and full of love. "Thank you, Pris," he said, his voice husky. For everything, for making this home, for making our Christmases so special. Priscilla's eyes welled up slightly. You do too, Elvis. It wouldn't be Christmas without you, without your spirit. You're the heart of it all. He pulled her closer, wrapping her in a warm embrace. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, feeling utterly safe and cherished. The lingering magic of Christmas enveloped them. A soft, comforting blanket woven from love, laughter, and shared memories. It was the peaceful winding down of a perfect day, a quiet promise of many more such Christmases to come, filled with the simple, profound joys of a family truly at home. The morning after Christmas at Graceland dawned soft and hushed, a gentle antithesis to the riotous joy of the day before. The sprawling mansion, usually brimming with activity, now felt peaceful, almost sleepy. The remnants of Christmas morning, a stray piece of crumpled wrapping paper, a forgotten bow, a half-eaten gingerbread cookie, were scattered like tangible echoes of the celebration. Elvis and Priscilla woke late, a rare luxury. Lisa Marie, surprisingly, was still asleep, exhausted from her adventures in Christmas magic. They found themselves wandering into the living room, the grand space bathed in the soft morning light, still carrying the faint scent of pine and cinnamon. Christmas tree, still adorned with its myriad lights and ornaments, stood as a silent testament to the magic it had witnessed. The piles of presents had been replaced by a few scattered toys. Lisa Marie's new doll carefully tucked into a miniature bed, her tiny piano resting silently beside it. Elvis, in his warm bathrobe, walked over to the tree, touching one of the sparkling ornaments. A faint smile played on his lips. "It was good, wasn't it, Pris?" he murmured, his voice still a little thick with sleep. Priscilla came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist and resting her chin on his shoulder. "It was perfect, Elvis. Absolutely perfect." They stood there for a moment, just absorbing the quiet beauty of the scene. The world outside, with its screaming headlines and demanding schedules, felt miles away. Here, within these walls, they had managed to carve out a slice of profound normalcy, a family Christmas that, despite the setting, could have belonged to any loving family. "She's going to remember these Christmases, you know," Priscilla said softly. "The tree, the singing, the games, the feeling of being home." Elvis nodded his eyes, distant as if already picturing Lisa Marie years from now, recalling these very moments. "That's all I want for her. Really good memories, a happy childhood, a place where she always knows she's loved, no matter what." He squeezed her hands, then turned in her embrace, pulling her closer for a gentle kiss. "Thank you for that, Pris, for making it happen." Priscilla smiled to heart full. "We make it happen together." They spent the morning in quiet domesticity. Elvis made them coffee, humming a soft tune. They shared a simple breakfast in the kitchen, the scent of fresh toast and coffee replacing the heavier smells of Christmas feast. Lisa Marie eventually appeared, still sleepy, but already eager to play with her new toys. The day unfolded lazily, unburdened by plans. Elvis played a few more quiet tunes on his new miniature piano, with Lisa Marie helping her find the notes to Jingle Bells. Priscilla read Christmas stories to her daughter, her voice soothing and warm. They watched a holiday movie curled up on the sofa under a soft blanket, occasionally dozing off in the comfortable warmth. There were no fans at the gates, no pressing phone calls, no urgent demands from managers or record labels. For this one day, the king was simply a man in his home, enjoying the quiet aftermath of the holidays with his wife and child. He helped Priscilla clean up some of the stray wrapping paper, even playfully chasing Lisa Marie with a piece of tinsel, making her shriek with laughter. As evening approached, casting long purple shadows across the living room, Elvis found himself back at the piano, his fingers drifting over the keys. This time, he didn't play a hymn or a carol, but a slow, bluesy melody, something introspective and soulful. Priscilla sat nearby listening, watching the soft play of emotions on his face. He was a complex man, driven by immense talent and an equally immense heart. The world saw the flashy outfits, the roaring crowds, the legend, but here in the intimate sanctuary of Graceland, they saw the man who loved his family above all else, who cherished these simple, fleeting moments of togetherness. The echoes of normalcy resonated deep within the walls of Graceland, not just in the laughter and shared meals, but in the quiet understanding between a husband and wife, in the pure joy of a child's Christmas morning, and in the profound sense of peace that settled over the home. As the last light of the day faded and the Christmas tree lights became the dominant glow in the room, Elvis finally pushed away from the piano. He stretched a satisfied yawn escaping him. He looked at Priscilla, then at the sleeping Lisa Marie, curled up on the sofa. "You know," he said, a thoughtful look on his face, "being the king is, well, it's a lot. But being a daddy, being a husband, that's the real title that matters." Priscilla smiled, reaching out to take his hand. "The best title of all," she agreed. Christmas season might be winding down, but the feeling it had fostered, the sense of connection and deep abiding love, would linger. Graceland, for all its fame and grandeur, remained a home, a place where a surprisingly normal family found their truest happiness, especially during Christmas. And as Elvis and Priscilla turned off the last light, heading to bed, the quiet magic of their family echoed in the silence, a promise of many more cherished moments to come.